What is the pioneer's definition of television, and how does that play out for the future of television as a medium?
Well, television to them is video, wherever they're watching it. A declining percentage is watching television in the traditional way. They don't necessarily differentiate between watching American Idol live on Fox versus watching a repeat of Pretty Little Liars or an MTV show that they've DVR'd or that they're watching on Netflix or that they're watching on demand or that they're pirating over the internet. And more of them are looking for ways to watch programming on any number of means that they can get to, whether it's iTunes or YouTube or whatever. They love television. They adore it. It's extremely important to them. They recognize the importance of the broadcast networks. They love the cable networks, but they love YouTube just as much. And they're just as likely to watch 3-minute programs, 5-minute programs on YouTube as they are to watch some of the more successful shows on broadcast or cable television. They tend to treat television in the same way they do music. It's the soundtrack of their lives. There's less loyalty to specific genres or programs. Music used to be packaged with albums, and certain performers you could always depend on to become platinum or gold or platinum sellers because of who they were. Now, because of Pandora and Spotify and iHeartRadio and so on, they tend to have a discovery process that they have a new favorite almost every day, and they're constantly discovering new favorites and discarding those that they listened to last week. It's a constant process of discovery. Television is going to evolve much in the same way. Will there be a constant process of discovery? I think that the cable formula, the HBO Showtime formula of 8 weeks of programming, 12 weeks of programming is going to become more common online with 12 days of 5-minute nuggets that'll be developed, and then if they're successful they'll move to another series where you watch every day and you're able to record it and you're able to save it or you're able to watch it on demand so it grows virally. So you'll have a lot of pockets of programming, short form nuggets of programming and series that are going to be shorter, more condensed, and then potentially evolve up into longer series. The future of television is very strong. I don't see the next decade any significant change in the traditional legacy models of broadcast or cable television, but I do think we're going to see much more content growing out of YouTube, growing out of online and mobile media, and becoming successful across those platforms as well, and then extending out to multiple platforms.
Well, that leads to the question of usage of multi-platform screens. How important will mobile be? How will tablets develop? How will their usage patterns to find and view content change from what we have today?
It's somewhat challenging to even predict where the reality of multiple screens is heading. We've got smartphones, we've got tablets, and so on up to the large screen to the movie theaters. The reality is that successful programming will seek its place on all platforms, and consumers will want to have content available across all platforms. Certain content lends itself to certain platforms. Large screen theatrical movies, when the new Batman, you want to go see it on a large screen. You really don't want to watch that because of the design elements of the program, the creative elements. On the small screen you can, but if you're a fan, you don't want to. There are certain programs that lend themselves much more readily to the small screen, and those programs will find their way to those screens. There are certain programs and programming genres that are going to cut across all screens. I think sports is a perfect example, where if there's a live sporting event, you'll watch it on whatever screen is available to you at that time, wherever you are, when you want it. Same thing with news. You're going to tend to want that experience. Some programming may lend itself to a large screen, but if it's real-time relevant, a program that there's a lot of social activity around and buzz around, and you're a participant in that, you're going to look for multiple screens to participate with, and you're definitely going to want to participate in that content, viewing that content, and having a social component to that content when the greatest number of your friends or others are participating. So you may not watch it on the screen that's ideal for that program, but you'll watch it wherever and whenever you can, wherever you can.
Jack, what are the attitudes about advertising, and what are the implications for advertisers?
Advertising is accepted as by internet pioneers, by the hooked up generation. It's part of the background that's always there. It's part of the flow and flood of content that's constantly overwhelming them in many ways. So they've learned to really sort through and discern what's relevant to them. And advertising that's really intrusive and that kind of attacks them is simply discarded and ignored. Advertisers are going to need to look for messaging that's highly targeted to their consumers, relevant to their consumers, even creating awareness among these internet pioneer and internet native generations is going to be very difficult, because there's a lot of content that's just not heard, not listened to. Think of the way, if you use Pandora or Spotify, think of the way you listen to music. There's a lot of it you just never hear. When something pops out that you like, that somehow is relevant to you and your interests, you pay more attention. And that's what advertising is going to need to learn. Advertisers are going to need to learn how to communicate effectively, find those audiences to whom their messages are relevant, and then communicate in ways that are appealing to them and that they're interested in sharing with others who have similar interests. So more and more advertising will go viral in the way that a lot of Coca-Cola advertising has gone viral. And advertisers, this generation of internet pioneers, they're called the hooked up generation, and they're hooked up. That's a resistance to long-term relationships, more of a focus on short-term relationships. It's the same thing with marketers and advertisers and brands. They're less loyal because you get them during their college years or in their early adult years with brand. That doesn't mean they're going to be loyal for any more than that one-time purchase. They're more promotionally oriented, and less likely to repurchase, even if they like the product, because they assume there are other products out there that they'll like just as much. So they're constantly updating their brand loyalty. So it's going to be very difficult for marketers to have sustainable relationships. And I think one of the big issues for marketers and for agencies is to develop campaigns that build sustainability into and product lines that build sustainable relationships with consumers. It's going to be more and more difficult.